Commander Vextal watched the security monitors with growing alarm. The human diplomat had been in the containment room for exactly 3 minutes and 14 seconds. That was already longer than any being had survived alone with a Caltharian Death Ripper. The creature paced behind the energy barrier, its crystalline scales catching the harsh laboratory lights. Each step left small burn marks on the reinforced floor from the acid that constantly dripped from its claws. The Death Ripper stood nearly 3 meters tall, with 6 limbs that could move faster than most sensors could track. Its black eyes reflected no mercy, no intelligence that other species could understand. It was a perfect killing machine. Ambassador Lee Mina stood perfectly still on the other side of the barrier. Vextal had expected her to show fear, maybe even panic. Instead, she was making soft cooing sounds. Her eyes had grown wide, but not with terror, with something else entirely. "Oh, my stars," Mina whispered, pressing her face closer to the energy field. "Look at you, you beautiful death machine." Vextal's forearms began to shake. In his 70 years of studying dangerous creatures, he had never heard anyone call a Death Ripper beautiful. Terrifying, yes. Deadly, absolutely. But beautiful? The human had clearly lost her mind. The Death Ripper stopped pacing. Its massive head tilted to one side, studying the small human who showed no fear. A low, rumbling sound came from deep in its chest. Vextal recognized that sound. It meant the creature was about to attack. "Ambassador Lee," he called through the communication system, "please step away from the barrier immediately. The creature is preparing to strike." But Mina didn't move back. Instead, she moved closer. She placed her small hand against the energy field, right at the creature's eye level. "Hello there, big guy," she said softly. "Aren't you just the most magnificent thing I've ever seen? Look at those claws. I bet you could cut through anything with those." The Death Ripper's rumbling grew louder. It approached the barrier slowly, each step deliberate and measured. Vextal reached for the emergency alarm. One more step, and the creature would be close enough to break through the energy field. Then something impossible happened. The Death Ripper sat down, not the crouch that predators use before pouncing. It actually sat like a domesticated creature might. The rumbling continued, but now it sounded different, less threatening, almost pleasant. "That's it," Mina said, her voice full of warmth. "You're just a big softy, aren't you?" "Yes, you are. Yes, you are, you gorgeous monster." Vextal blinked all 6 of his eyes. The most feared predator in the galaxy was making what could only be described as happy sounds at a human who was talking to it, like it was a small pet. "Ambassador," Vextal said carefully, "what exactly are you doing?" "I'm making friends," Mina replied without taking her eyes off the Death Ripper. "Look at that face. How could anyone be scared of that sweet little murder baby?" The Death Ripper pressed its massive head against the energy barrier, right where Mina's hand was placed. If not for the field between them, she would have been touching one of the most dangerous creatures known to exist. "This is not possible," Vextal muttered. He checked his instruments 3 times. The readings were correct. The Death Ripper's stress levels had dropped to almost nothing. Its aggressive hormones were barely detectable. According to every scanner in the room, the creature was completely calm. "Can I go in there?" Mina asked suddenly. "Absolutely not." Vextal nearly fell from his observation platform. "That creature has killed thousands of beings. It dissolved an entire Caltharian research station last month. But look how gentle he's being," Mina pointed out. The Death Ripper had lowered its head and was making soft chirping sounds. "He just wants some attention. Don't you, sweetheart?" As if responding to her words, the Death Ripper made a sound that was unmistakably affectionate. It was still a terrifying noise that would have sent most warriors running, but there was something undeniably gentle about it. Vextal made a decision that went against every protocol in the book. He lowered the energy barrier. "If you die," he said weakly, "I will be executed by 17 different governments." Mina stepped into the containment room without hesitation. The Death Ripper remained perfectly still as she approached. When she was close enough to touch, it lowered its head even further. "May I?" she asked politely, as if the creature could understand her. The Death Ripper made a soft huffing sound that seemed like agreement. Mina reached out slowly and placed her hand on the creature's head, right between its deadly eyes. For a moment, Vextal stopped breathing entirely. The Death Ripper began to purr, not the threatening rumble from before, but an actual purr of contentment. Its eyes closed halfway, and it leaned into Mina's touch like it had been waiting its entire life for this moment. "There we go," Mina said softly. "You're not scary at all, are you? You're just lonely." Vextal watched in stunned silence as the most dangerous predator in the galaxy melted under the gentle touch of one small human who saw beauty where everyone else saw only death. The news spread faster than a quantum transmission burst. Within 6 hours, every major government in the galaxy had received the footage. Within 12 hours, emergency council sessions were being called across 17 star systems. Within 24 hours, the entire galactic community was asking the same question. How had one human done the impossible? Dr. Korthmel had not slept since receiving the emergency call. As the galaxy's leading expert on Death Rippers, he was supposed to have answers. Instead, he found himself staring at security footage that made no sense according to everything he knew about xenobiology. The human ambassador, Lee Mina, had spent the night in the diplomatic quarters. The Death Ripper was with her, not in a cage, not behind barriers. It was simply there, in the same room, like some kind of companion animal. The morning security footage showed Mina waking up on her sleeping platform. The Death Ripper was curled up on the floor nearby, still making that impossible purring sound. When Mina sat up and stretched, the creature opened its black eyes and made a soft chirping noise. "Good morning, Fluffy," Mina said cheerfully, as if greeting a beloved pet. Dr. Korthmel paused the footage. She had named it. The most feared predator in known space had been given a cute nickname by a human who seemed completely unaware of how terrifying this should be. The footage continued. Mina got up and walked to the small food preparation area. The Death Ripper followed her, its massive claws clicking softly on the metal floor. Instead of the aggressive stalking that preceded an attack, the creature moved with casual friendliness. "Are you hungry, big guy?" Mina asked, opening a nutrition packet. The Death Ripper sat down and tilted its head, waiting patiently. Dr. Korthmel made a note that this behavior had never been observed in the wild. Death Rippers took what they wanted through violence. They did not wait politely to be fed. Then came the part that made Dr. Korthmel question his sanity. Mina noticed that Fluffy was scratching at the wall with his claws. Instead of being alarmed by the damage to station property, she looked concerned for the creature's comfort. "Oh, you need something to scratch, don't you?" she said thoughtfully. "Your claws are probably uncomfortable if you can't use them properly." She contacted the station's engineering department and requested materials, not weapons or restraints, but materials to build what she called a scratching post. The engineers, still in shock from the previous day's events, delivered compressed neutronium beams without question. Dr. Korthmel watched in amazement as Mina constructed a simple frame using neutronium, one of the hardest substances known to science. She worked carefully, talking to Fluffy the entire time. "This should be perfect for those beautiful claws of yours," she said, patting the finished structure. "Go ahead, try it out." The Death Ripper approached the scratching post cautiously. It extended one claw and gently scraped it across the neutronium surface. The material held firm against claws that could slice through battleship armor. Fluffy made a pleased rumbling sound and began to properly scratch, working each claw in turn. "That's it." Mina clapped her hands together. "Feel better now?" The Death Ripper looked at her and made what could only be described as a happy chirp. Then it did something that made Dr. Korthmel drop his datapad. It rolled over onto its back, exposing its vulnerable belly, and looked at Mina expectantly. "Oh, you want belly rubs?" Mina laughed. "Of course you do, you big softy." She knelt down beside the creature and began rubbing its belly with both hands. The Death Ripper's purring grew so loud that it began causing vibrations in the station's walls. Its claws retracted completely, and its eyes closed in pure bliss. Dr. Korthmel paused the footage again and checked the readings. The Death Ripper's vital signs showed complete relaxation. Its stress hormones were at levels so low they were barely detectable. According to every instrument, this apex predator was experiencing what could only be called joy. The door to his laboratory opened, and Senator Krex of the Drachmarie warrior caste entered. The massive alien's battle-scarred carapace was clicking with agitation. "Doctor," Krex said in his deep, gravelly voice, "my people have fought these creatures for 300 years. We have lost entire colonies to Death Ripper attacks. How is this small human doing what our greatest warriors cannot?" Dr. Korthmel replayed the belly-rubbing scene. "I believe, Senator, that we have been approaching this entirely wrong. Look at the creature's behavior. It's not acting like a mindless killer. It's acting like what? Like a pet, like a companion animal that has been seeking affection and connection." Senator Krex's clicking grew louder. "That is impossible. Death Rippers are pure predators. They feel nothing but hunger and aggression." "Then explain this," Dr. Korthmel said, playing another section of footage. Mina was sitting on her sleeping platform, reading from a data pad. Fluffy had positioned himself next to her, his massive head resting gently on her lap. Every few minutes, Mina would absent-mindedly scratch behind what might have been the creature's ears. Each time she did, Fluffy would make soft, contented sounds. They bonded. Dr. Korthmel said quietly, "In less than 24 hours, a human and a Death Ripper have formed an emotional connection that our scientists said was impossible." Senator Krex stared at the footage in silence. Finally, he spoke. "If this is true, if these creatures are capable of forming bonds rather than simply killing, then we have been wrong about them for centuries." Dr. Korthmel nodded grimly. "And if we're wrong about Death Rippers, what else might we be wrong about?" The emergency session of the Galactic Council had never seen anything like this. Representatives from 237 different species filled the great chamber, all trying to understand a concept that seemed to break the fundamental laws of survival. Ambassador Lee Mina stood at the center podium, completely calm despite having the attention of the galaxy's most powerful beings focused on her. Beside her, Fluffy lay curled up like an enormous, deadly cat. The Death Ripper's presence had initially caused panic among the delegates, but after an hour of watching it sleep peacefully, most had relaxed. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," said Counselor Thexare of the Hegemony. Her tentacles writhed with confusion as she spoke. "You are telling us that humans deliberately keep dangerous creatures in their homes for no practical purpose?" Mina nodded cheerfully. "That's right. We call them pets. Some people keep small ones, like cats and dogs. Others prefer bigger animals, like horses or even bears." A collective gasp echoed through the chamber. The Zethari delegate, whose species was known for their logical thinking, stood up on his 6 legs. "Bears!" he clicked in disbelief. "You keep creatures that could kill you for enjoyment?" "Well, most people don't keep bears," Mina admitted. "But some do. And it's not just about size or danger. We had a man who kept alligators in his backyard. Another family had a pet tiger. Oh, and there was this woman who kept a venomous snake collection." The chamber erupted in alarmed chatter. Several delegates began backing away from the podium, even though Mina and Fluffy were behind protective barriers. Prime Minister Vorthe K of the Drachmarie Federation leaned forward, his scarred battle armor creaking. "Ambassador Lee, this makes no sense from a survival perspective. Why would your species deliberately put itself in danger?" Mina scratched behind Fluffy's ear ridge, causing the Death Ripper to purr so loudly that the floor vibrated. "I think it's because we see past the danger to the individual animal underneath. Take Fluffy here. Yes, he could probably destroy this entire station if he wanted to. But look at him." Fluffy had rolled onto his back, showing his armored belly to the hundreds of watching delegates. His claws were fully retracted, and his eyes were half closed with contentment. "He's not thinking about destroying anything," Mina continued. "He just wants attention and affection. Most animals do, even the scary ones. We humans seem to be good at recognizing that." The crystalline representative of the Shard Collective chimed in with harmonic tones that translated as, "But how do you determine which creatures are safe to approach? Surely you must have some system." Mina thought for a moment. "Well, we don't always get it right. Lots of humans have been hurt by animals they thought were friendly. But we've learned that most aggressive behavior comes from fear or protecting territory or babies. If you approach them calmly and show you're not a threat, many dangerous animals will accept you. She gestured to Fluffy, who had begun making soft, chirping sounds at the delegates. When I first met Fluffy, he was pacing and growling because he was stressed and lonely. He'd been in that containment room for weeks with no social contact. Once he realized I wasn't going to hurt him and that I actually liked him, he relaxed. Dr. Keth Moore, who had been studying the footage for days, stood up from his observation seat. Ambassador, you mentioned that humans keep many types of dangerous creatures as companions. Are there others who might be able to do what you've done with this Death Ripper? Oh, absolutely, Mina said brightly. My friend Kim Hanna is amazing with reptiles. She could probably make friends with those void serpents from the Andromeda sector. And there's this guy named Park Jisoo who works with big predators. He'd love to meet one of those crystal bears from Proxima 7. The chamber fell silent. The crystal bears of Proxima 7 had wiped out 3 different colonial attempts. They were considered so dangerous that the entire system had been declared off-limits. Senator Cricks of the Trade Federation spoke carefully. You're saying there are humans who specialize in befriending specific types of dangerous creatures? Sure, Mina replied. We have people who work with sharks, others who handle poisonous spiders, some who train wolves. There are humans who swim with whales, and others who study lions in the wild. We've been doing this for thousands of years. She paused to give Fluffy another scratch, causing him to make happy rumbling sounds. I think the key is that we don't see them as monsters. We see them as animals who are just trying to survive, same as us. When you approach them with respect and genuine care, instead of fear and aggression, they usually respond positively. The Ethereal Collective's representative, speaking through psychic projection, asked a question that everyone was thinking. If this is true, if humans can form bonds with creatures we consider deadly threats, what does this mean for galactic security? Mina smiled. Well, maybe it means a lot of the creatures you think are enemies are just looking for friends. Maybe instead of fighting them or hiding from them, you could try understanding them. Fluffy chose that moment to stand up and stretch, showing off his impressive size and razor-sharp claws. But instead of looking threatening, he looked like any contented pet waking up from a nap. He nuzzled against Mina's shoulder and made soft, affectionate sounds. See, Mina said, hugging the galaxy's most feared predator. He's really just a big teddy bear with murder claws. The delegate stared in stunned silence as she kissed the top of Fluffy's deadly head, and he purred with pure happiness. 3 weeks after Ambassador Lee's presentation to the Galactic Council, Earth's orbital stations were busier than they had ever been. Ships from every corner of the galaxy waited in long lines, each carrying cargo that would have terrified most civilized beings. Instead of weapons or trade goods, these ships held the galaxy's most feared creatures. Dr. Park Jisoo stood in the main receiving bay of a newly constructed interspecies dangerous creature sanctuary, watching as another transport ship docked. She brushed a strand of hair from her face and checked her data pad. Today's arrivals included a void hunter from the dark matter regions, 3 bone crushers from the Magellanic Clouds, and something called a nightmare weaver that the Andromedans claimed could drive people insane just by looking at it. Another normal Tuesday, she muttered to herself. The Centaurian delegation approached her nervously. Their leader, a tall, blue-skinned humanoid named Zexthal, carried a containment unit that hummed with dangerous energy. Dr. Park, he said, his voice shaking slightly, we have brought our most terrible plague. The swarm has destroyed 12 of our colonies. We have lost millions of our people to these creatures. Jisoo looked at the containment unit with interest rather than fear. May I see them? Zexthal hesitated. They are extremely dangerous. Even looking at them can cause madness and despair. I'll be careful, Jisoo promised. With trembling fingers, Zexthal opened a small viewing port in the container. Inside, Jisoo could see what looked like a cloud of tiny, shimmering insects. They moved together in perfect coordination, creating beautiful patterns as they flew. Oh my, Jisoo breathed. They're gorgeous. Zexthal nearly dropped the container. Gorgeous? Dr. Park, these creatures have caused more death and destruction than any weapon we know. Jisoo studied the swarm more closely. The tiny insects were indeed beautiful, with wings that caught the light like jewels. But she noticed something else too. They look stressed, she said. See how tightly they're clustering together? And the way they're moving in those tight circles? They're scared. Scared. Zexthal repeated. The plague swarms feel fear? All creatures feel fear, Jisoo said gently. May I try something? Before Zexthal could answer, Jisoo began humming softly. It was a simple tune, something her grandmother used to sing to calm crying babies. The effect on the swarm was immediate. The tight, frantic circles slowed down. The insects began to spread out more naturally. How are you doing that? Zexthal whispered. Sound waves, Jisoo explained, still humming. Many insects respond to specific frequencies. I'm guessing your people always approach them with weapons and loud noises, right? That would terrify any creature. The swarm had now formed a gentle, flowing pattern that was genuinely beautiful to watch. Jisoo carefully opened the container's main access port. Dr. Park, no. Zexthal cried, but the swarm didn't attack. Instead, a small group of the insects flew out and began circling around Jisoo's head like a living crown. Their wings made soft, musical sound that harmonized with her humming. They're trying to communicate, Jisoo said with wonder. They're not a plague at all. They're just trying to talk to you. Across the bay, her assistant Kim Hannah was having her own breakthrough with the bone crushers. The creatures were massive, looking like a cross between a bear and a tank, with jaws that could snap steel beams. The Magellanic delegation had delivered them in heavy restraints, warning that they attacked anything that moved. But Hannah had noticed something the aliens missed. The creatures kept trying to build nests out of the metal scraps in their container. They weren't attacking things. They were trying to collect building materials. They're not aggressive. Hannah called over to Jisoo. They're just trying to make homes for their babies. She had released the largest bone crusher from its restraints and was now helping it arrange pieces of soft material into a proper nest. The creature, which supposedly attacked everything on sight, was gently nudging the materials into place with careful precision. The most dramatic success came with the Void Hunter. The creature existed partially in normal space and partially in dark matter, making it nearly impossible to see or contain. The Kepler delegation had brought it in a specialized quantum cage, warning that it had destroyed 3 research stations. Dr. Lee Sung, the sanctuary's physicist, took one look at the barely visible creature and realized the problem immediately. It's not attacking the stations, he announced. It's trying to stabilize them. Look at the energy patterns. The Void Hunter was indeed trying to reinforce the quantum structures around it, but because it existed in multiple dimensions, its attempts to help were actually tearing apart anything built for normal space. It's like a person trying to help repair a house, but they're so strong they accidentally break everything they touch, Sun explained. We just need to give it something that can handle its dimensional effects. Within hours, they had constructed a play area using quantum-stable materials. The Void Hunter immediately began arranging and rearranging the structures, clearly enjoying the creative process. It even started making what could only be described as quantum sculptures. By the end of the day, the sanctuary looked like the strangest zoo in the galaxy. Plague swarms danced in musical formations. Bone crushers built elaborate nests and played with oversized toys. The Void Hunter created art that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Jisoo stood in the center of it all, surrounded by creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, and felt nothing but peace. The Nightmare Weaver, which was supposed to drive people insane, had turned out to be a shy creature that just wanted to weave beautiful dreams for anyone willing to sleep near it. You know what I think? Hannah said, scratching behind the ear of a purring bone crusher. I think the galaxy has been misunderstanding these creatures for a very long time. Jisoo nodded, watching the plague swarm create a light show that brought tears to her eyes with its beauty. Maybe they were never monsters at all. Maybe they were just looking for someone who would take the time to understand them. 6 months had passed since the first Death Ripper learned to purr in human hands. The galaxy looked nothing like it had before. Where once there had been fear and violence, now there was something no one had expected. Peace. Commander Vextau walked through the corridors of Station Harmony. the renamed diplomatic hub that had become the center of a new galactic order. His steps were careful and measured, not because he was afraid, but because he didn't want to disturb the small creature riding on his shoulder. The spike worm had been a gift from the Human Pet Adoption Agency. At first, Vextal had refused. Spike worms were known to inject deadly poison through their razor-sharp spines. They had wiped out entire expeditions to their home world. But the human caretaker, a cheerful woman named Song Mira, had insisted. "Look at those sweet little spines," she had said, gently stroking the creature that should have killed her instantly. "And those bright eyes. He's just looking for someone to love him." Now, weeks later, Vextal found himself talking to the little creature he had reluctantly named Tiny. The spike worm would curl up against his neck when he worked late, providing warmth and comfort. Its spines remained retracted when it was content, only extending when it sensed danger nearby. "The monthly reports are in," Vextal said to Tiny, who made a soft chirping sound in response. The Caltharian Death Ripper War officially ended yesterday. Both sides signed a peace treaty. The war had been raging for over 2 centuries. The Caltharians had fled their homeworld because of Death Ripper attacks, living as refugees across the galaxy. The Death Rippers had followed them, seemingly intent on complete destruction. Now they knew the truth. The Death Rippers hadn't been trying to destroy the Caltharians. They had been trying to find them. The creatures were social animals who had bonded with the Caltharian colonists generations ago. When the colonists left suddenly, the Death Rippers had spent decades searching for their missing friends. Ambassador Limina had been the one to figure out. She had brought Fluffy to a meeting with Caltharian refugees and watched as both sides recognized each other. The reunion had been tearful for the Caltharians and purr-filled for the Death Rippers. "The Drachmary have also filed their final report," Vextal continued, scratching Tiny's small head. The spike worm's eyes closed with pleasure. "Senator Krex says his warrior caste has found new purpose as professional pet caretakers. Apparently, their battle training makes them excellent at handling large predators safely." It was true. The fierce Drachmary warriors, who had spent their lives fighting dangerous creatures, turned out to be perfect for caring for them. Their strength and quick reflexes meant they could play safely with creatures that might accidentally hurt smaller beings. Their discipline helped them stay calm around animals that looked scary but were actually gentle. Vextal's communication device chimed. A message from a Human Pet Adoption Agency appeared on his screen. He read it aloud to Tiny, who always seemed interested in the daily updates. "New success stories today. The Void Serpents of Andromeda have been relocated to a sanctuary run by Kim Hanna. Initial reports suggest they are not aggressive predators, but rather interdimensional artists who create sculptures by bending space-time." He scrolled down to more reports. "The Crystal Bears of Proxima 7 have made contact with Park Jisu's team. Turns out they were protecting ancient crystal forests on their planet and thought the colonists were trying to destroy them. Communication has been established, and a sharing agreement is being worked out." Tiny made interested chirping sounds, as if he understood every word. Vextal had stopped being surprised by how intelligent these supposedly mindless creatures turned out to be. The biggest change had been in the Centaurian sector. The plague swarms that had terrorized their colony for decades were now performing in concerts across the galaxy. Dr. Park Jisu had discovered that the swarms were actually musical creatures who created complex compositions through their flight patterns and wing sounds. What the Centaurians had experienced as attacks were actually desperate attempts to share their art. "Oh, this is interesting," Vextal said, reading another report. "The Nightmare Weavers have opened their own therapeutic center. Apparently, their ability to enter dreams makes them excellent at helping people work through trauma and fears. The creatures that were supposed to drive people insane were actually natural healers who could repair damaged minds by working directly with dream states. Several psychiatric hospitals had already requested Nightmare Weaver partnerships." Vextal's door chimed, and Kim Hanna entered carrying a small case. Tiny perked up immediately, recognizing one of his favorite humans. "Commander," Hanna said with a smile, "I have someone I'd like you to meet." She opened the case to reveal a tiny creature that looked like a miniature dragon made of liquid starlight. It was barely the size of Vextal's thumb, but its eyes held ancient intelligence. "This is a reality shifter from the quantum dimensions, Hannah explained. They've been causing problems in the physics labs because people thought they were trying to break reality. But they're actually trying to fix it. They can see flaws in space-time that we can't. The tiny creature floated up from the case and circled around Vextal's head, making sounds like tiny bells. Tiny chirped a greeting, and the reality shifter responded with musical tones. I think, Vextal said softly, we're going to need a bigger office. As if agreeing, both creatures settled down on his desk and began what could only be described as a conversation between species that had never been meant to meet. Outside his window, Vextal could see ships from across the galaxy arriving at the adoption center. Each one carried creatures that had once been feared, now seeking the one thing they had always wanted. Some would understand them. The galaxy had learned that monsters were just friends waiting to be discovered.